Hey guys, in today's webinar, we are going to build a very basic movie listing Android app. And the purpose of this app is basically to show you how you can to show you how you can build a basic model of an Android app, which can then move on to building. Maybe you can build something like an e-commerce app, which is like Flipkart, or something like Book My Show, etc. Right? So this is where it all begins. You basically have to know how you have to model your schema, how you're going to show your different data. So this app will basically going to show you a list of movies, and on clicking one of the items in the list, you'll be taken to a more detailed page. That is basically what is going to happen, right? So the steps to doing this is first we have to log in or sign up on Hasura and create a project on Hasura, right? I'm going to be using Hasura as my to build my backend. So let's do that. Let's go to hasura.io. Okay, I have actually already logged in here. All right, so I have logged in. You just have to click on the login button that comes up. One second, I'll just show yeah. So go to hasura.io, click on login using Google. And yeah, so for the ones of you, I mean for the guys who are logging in for the very first time, you will you are provided a free Hasura trial project when you create an account on Hasura. So that will kind of look like a test project over here, and then it'll say activate test project or something of that sort. So just go ahead and do that. And once you do that, you will receive an email on the email address that you've registered with the credentials to log in into this console. So go ahead and do that as well. So once you do that, you will get a link to your console, and it will look something like this, right? So now to create this app, we need to create a schema, which is the next step that we need to do. So and once we create the schema, that is basically a backend tables and things of that sort, where we will host our data, and then finally we will load it all up on the Android app. So I've already created a few tables. So first one would be movie, which has, I'll just show you what it has. Yeah. So it has 4 columns, which is ID, name, image, URL, and plot. This is basically the ID of the movie, which will be an auto-incremented value. Once again, I will just create this again for you guys so that you understand how that works. So I'll just delete all of these and show you how you can do this. All right. 1 second. Okay. All right. So this is how you'll start fresh. Create a table called movie. Let's add one column called ID, another one called name, which is the name of the movie. Then we will have image, URL. So I'm going to go to IMDb and basically get a random list of movies, get their names, get the image URL. So the image is already uploaded on IMDb on their database. So I'm just going to copy the URL and use that URL to load the image in the Android app, right? So this is just going to be a link of the image and not the image in itself. Plot of the movie, which is a text. And yeah, so that would be it. And the primary key can be ID. All right. Next, so every movie has a language associated with it, the language in which the movie was made. So let's create another table called language, and with just one column called name, and that can be the primary key. All right. Let's add some languages. It can be English, Hindi, Tamil. All right, so the timing is enough. Next, let's create a table to save all the genre that the movie, all the different kinds of genres that we support or that we have right now. So this is not the genre for each movie, but a list of genres that we have. So this will have a column called ID, another column called the name of the genre. The primary key can be ID. And yeah, that would basically be it. So again, to this also, let's add a few genres. So it can be horror, thriller. One second, I think I added another one. Just delete this. Thriller, there can be action. What else? Romance and comedy. Okay, I guess these would do. Okay. Next, we need to create a table. Since Hasura hosts relational databases for us, next we need to create a table which basically maps the movie table with the genre table. By that I mean that this will be a list. This table will basically have a list of all the genres that a movie has, right? So let's see how that looks. So let's call this movie underscore genre. Make an ID which is auto incremented. Let's make a movie ID. This will basically be the ID of the movie which we want, and also the genre ID, right? And the primary key can be ID. All right. Next, similarly, we also need to. All right. Actually, we don't need to do the same thing for the language, because we can just support. For the time being, I'll just add one language per movie, right? So for that, what we need to do is we need to add another column into the movie table. And so let's go to modify, add another column called language. This is if type text, and let's add this. All right, so language is added. I am also going to create a foreign key from this language to this language table. So basically, by that I mean that no other language other than Hindi, English, or Tamil can be added. So how I do that is go to language. The reference table is language, and the name, right? So this basically just means that I will not be able to add a random language, right? Like, so if you make some typos, or if you say, if you make a typo while adding a language or something like that, that won't be allowed. Which is why it's a good practice to do this for data consistency. All right, so we have done this. So the next thing that we need to add is basically a relationship from the movie table to the movie genre table. So let's see how we can do that. What we can do is we can go to the movie genre table and add a foreign key from the movie ID to the movie table, and also the genre ID to the genre table. So this is how that will look. So I'm going to say movie ID, the reference table is movie, and the ID, right? So I'm basically mapping the movie ID in this table to the ID column of the movie table. Right, so I've added that foreign key. Next thing, similarly, I'm also going to do the same thing for the genre. So I'm going to go to genre ID, genre, and the ID. All right, so these are the foreign keys that I've added. So after you've added the foreign keys, I want to add a relationship for this movie into the, basically I want to get a list of genres that this movie comes under, right? So how I do that is I basically add an array relationship on the movie genre table, right? So you just have to, let me see if I can explain that 1 second. So what this will do is, so I'm basically adding an array relationship on the movie table by using the foreign key constraint on the movie ID, right? On the genre table. So what's happening is that right now I'm going to add, so I'm going to say genres and add this relationship. So now if I go to browse rows, I will see another thing called genres. We will see this in action once we add a little bit of dummy data. So let's do that now. So I'm going to go to IMDb. And pick a list of movies. Alright, so let me see if I can do IMDb top 250. Alright, so let's add the Shawshank Redemption first. So I'm just going to add like, okay, 2 movies. So first is Shawshank Redemption. So I'm going to go into my movie table, insert row, and alright, so let's do this. So I added the name, the image URL I can get it by clicking on this and copying the image address. So I'm gonna copy that. Let's see if this is right. Okay. And the plot, let's copy some plot. All right. This is the plot, and the language can be English. So this point in time, if I try to do something like this, see it says foreign key violation instead of doing movie. It violates the movie language foreign key, right? This is because I've misspelled English and I'm being corrected, right? This is why adding the other table for language is important and useful. So let's try inserting this again. Okay, fine. So this time the insert was successful. So now we have one row. Let's add another one. Let's add the Dark Knight. So that would be the Dark Knight. Image URL. Copy the image address. Plot. And language can be English. So similarly, if you want to make it in such a way that a single movie can be in multiple languages, you have to do the same thing that I did for the genres, right? So you just have to do the basically create an ID for this language table and then map, and then in the movie and then have another table called movie_language, and then add the movie ID over there along with the language ID, and then map it to the movie table as an array relationship, right? So now one thing that I've missed is adding the genres for the movie, right? So let's do that. Let's see what genres these come under. Where are those written? Okay, so it's crime and drama, right? So let me go to our genre table and I'm going to add two more, crime and drama. Now I go back to my movie genre table. So now I just have to keep a track of this ID, which is 2. So I'm going to go to movie genre table and insert this. I think a better thing to do would be to map the genre name itself. But anyways, for the time being, I'm just going to do this. So I'm going to open this up on a... So we want to add crime and drama, which is 7 and 8, right? So that would be 2, 7, and 2, 8. I think I added it again. Take this off. Alright, so now if I go to my movie table, you will see that I can view the genres for this. Right? So I think it would make sense to add the genre name also over here. But that's okay. What I can do is I can add a relationship on this table and then fetch that. Alright. Alright. So now I can also view the name over here. Okay, alright, perfect. So now if I come here and click on genres, I have a list of genres that I have supported and also the name over here. Alright, okay, fine. So, okay, fine. Now let's add the same thing for the Dark Knight as well. I will just scroll down here, and Dark Knight is action, crime, drama, and thriller. Okay. So that would be 4, 7, 8, and 2. 4, 7, 8, and 2, right? I think this is a little cumbersome. So what we can do is directly map the name itself. So that way it would be a little better for us. So what we can do is, let's go into movie genre and modify this. Firstly, let's delete both these rows. Okay, and let's modify this table, right? what I am going to do is I'm going to remove this column and add another one called genre name, which will be of type text, and I'm going to add this, and I'm going to say genre name. I think for this I might have to add a foreign key on there, yeah. So I'm going to go here. I no longer need the ID, so I'm going to keep that. It's okay, it doesn't matter. Alright, so I have to delete this table and add it again, so just give me a second to do that. Okay, so let's add another table. Genre, name, text, and as the primary key. Okay, fine. So going back here, modify, and now I can add genre name, right? Okay, perfect. And going back here, let me just insert a few action, drama, crime. What else was there? Thriller. Alright, so I've added those rows. Now going back to my movie genre, and so first Shawshank Redemption, which would be number 2. Genre name, I'm going to add crime and drama, right? So crime and drama. Similarly, next movie is Dark Knight, which is 3. So I'm going to go at 3. And Dark Knight was action, crime, drama, and thriller. So that'll be action, crime, drama, and thriller. Okay, so that's done. So now if I click on this, I get to see the genre name as well, right? Alright, perfect. So this is done. So now we have our database, our schema ready, our data. We have some amount of data, like 2 rows, that's it, which should be enough for us to get started, right? Alright, so now let's get started with our Android app. So the first thing we need to do is open up Android Studio. One second, let me just close this. Okay, so open up Android Studio, start a new Android project. Let's call it movie list. And next. Alright, so we have, you can basically go through a list of all the APIs and decide which one we want to support. A lot of things have changed after API 21. And the animations, like the material design, the ripple effect that you see on your buttons and things of that sort have all come after API 21. So you'll have to do a little bit of extra work to support or to provide backwards compatibility on your app. So you can decide that because Android Studio has this nifty thing wherein it tells you how many, what percentage of devices that you will basically be running on, right? So by choosing API 19, I'll be running approximately on 90.1% of the devices, right? Which is good enough. But I usually like going with Lollipop, which is, I think, which most of the devices have, like 71.3%, which is fine. So I'm going to go with that and select an empty activity and call it my main activity, which is fine, and create this project. So while that's happening, another thing that we need to do is, so I'm going to be using the Android Sdk that Hasura provides to make all my queries and whatnot, right? So I will integrate that as well into my app. Let's see if our app is opened. It has. Okay. One second. It's still, Gradle is still building. Okay, so I'm gonna go to, all right. So the first thing we need to do is so we can get to this bit in a bit. I think first we can start developing our UI. So let's do that actually. So All right. So another thing is that the constraint layer is something that is new, that has come out in Android, which is quite useful. And teaching you how to use constraint layer can be another webinar that I can take later. But for the time being, since I want to do this quickly, I'm just gonna go ahead with a linear layout and add something known as a Recyclerview, right? No, not this. 1 second. Alright, I think we also need to add Recyclerview to our Gradle. So we'll do that as well. Right, and let's give it a, okay, wait, just add Recyclerview. Let me just get the, link to add it. It's not this one. I will just quickly get it from, yeah, from one of these guys. I think this is fine. Basically just need the compiling from the recycle. Yeah, here. It's part of the support library that Android provides. So let's get to that and add that into our app. Okay. Let's sync Gradle. I'm doing this because if I do that, then Recycler will be, see right now it says missing classes, which just basically says that it doesn't know what Recyclerview is. So once I add it, then autocomplete and all those fast features will start working, which will basically help us build faster. So let's just wait until this happens. There is a mismatch in the build version. Let me just, let's go with 26.0.0. It's not usually good practice to leave a plus sign because the next time your app compiles, it will be an updated version of the library and you may not know what has broken or what has changed in the library, right? So it's always best practice to use a definitive version and not really plus or the latest version. Not an automatic version wherein it updates to the latest version, right? So let's go with 25.3.1 itself. And I will just, let me see if I can sync this. Okay, I'll just install this. Okay, so I'm actually just going to go with 25.3.1 because it's just a lot of pain to find out the latest version. Just have to install the build tools for this. Let's see what the latest version is. Recommended version is 0.3, so let's use that. Okay, Gauravjit has asked a question. He's asking what the difference between a relative layout and a constraint layout is. They are similar and very different because constraint layout is basically an auto-adaptive layout. By that I mean that you can add constraints on your view, so it will be a rule-based thing. which is kind of similar to how a relative layout works, wherein you go like this, align it to the left, and this layout should be below some other layout and whatnot, right? But constraint layout is supposed to be much more efficient performance-wise and and adaptive, and it's very adaptive, much more adaptive than relative layout. Secondly, relative layout is not that clear in a lot of aspects, so maybe if I do end up taking another webinar on the constraint layouts, maybe we can get into more details of that at that point in time. Okay, Gaurav ji asked another question. What is 25.3.1 that has changed? Okay, so basically when you are building your Android app, Alright, so when you're building an Android app, you basically need to specify what version of the build tools you're using. By build tool, I mean that what Android uses to build your app. So at this point in time, so that build tool version has to be the same as the version that you use for the Android support libraries. These are the libraries that Android provides for, so the Recyclerview provides the Recyclerview library. App Compact is basically something that provides backward compatibility for things below 21, API 21, and things of that sort, right? So, which is why, so what happened at this point in time was that my build tool version was at 26, and the compile version of Recyclerview that I got was 25.3.1. Now, if I do a little bit of Google search and basically figure out what the latest, so if you can go to tools and Android and the SDK manager, you can basically see what the latest version is. I just didn't want to do all those things, so which is why I went ahead with this. Alright, so now that we have Recyclerview also, let's see. Alright, so we have Recyclerview. I'm gonna add match parent and match parent. Alright, and give it an ID. Let's call it Recyclerview, right? Okay, so now we have a very simple Recyclerview and a linear layout over it. Cool, that's what our main activity is gonna show. Let's also set a title for this activity. Call it movie list. And now just let's just run the app and see how it looks. It won't really have anything. So I'm running it on my on a physical Android device. Hopefully you guys can see this. All right. In the meantime, I'll just have a look at this. Should not use lower version. The target version 26. Target version is 26. Alright, let's do 25. Let's sync this. Alright, so the app is done. We don't have any. Ignore this toolbar. This is part of the TeamViewer, what I'm using to basically stream what's happening on my Android phone or my laptop, right? So our app is basically until here, right? All right, so right now we have a toolbar with the title that we've given and also an empty Recyclerview. So now let's start by building out our Recyclerview and figure out how that should look, right? All right, so so first let's get a reference to our Recyclerview. So I will do Recyclerview right, and all right. So this is something that you will have to do each time you want to reference a view, right? You have to basically say, you have to instantiate something and then go like find view by ID, or if it's in a fragment, you'll have to say view.find view by ID, right? So there is this other library called Butterknife. 1 second, I will just show it to you. And basically what Butterknife does is it makes this easier for us and gives us some cleaner code to basically access all of our views, right? So this is something that you guys can explore. Since this is a very simple app, I'm not going to be really using it, but this is something that you guys can explore, which will make your development faster. All right. So a Recyclerview basically has a few steps that you need to follow. The first step is you have to give it an layout manager. The second step is set an adapter for it. So these are the two things we need to do, right? So first is so let's set a layout manager. So let's call it linear layout manager. I think it accepts context, right? So let's give it. So this basically makes it vertical. So this specifies to our recycler view that we are going to have a vertical list. Next thing is we need to have an adapter, right? So if we have a look at this, if we say set adapter, you will see that this is of type Recyclerview.adapter, right? So let's create a new adapter. So let's head over here and let's create a new class called movie list adapter, which extends from Recyclerview.adapter. If you see, there's also something that this adapter is accepting, which is a view holder, which extends Recyclerview.viewholder, right? So let's create another thing called a movie. Let's call it movie card view holder, and this also extends Recyclerview.viewholder. Okay, so somebody's asked a question. Yeah, Srividya asked a question. What does the extend mean in class statement? Okay, so let me explain that. So let me create a class A, all right, and I have another class B, right? So now if I have some function, let me go to A, and or better yet, actually, let me do this. Let me call it animal. Instead of A, I'll call it animal, and there's another class called dog, right? So now this animal class will have functions like, let's say, walk, right? So animal class has functions like walk, and basically you can do something here, and it will have number of legs, or something of that sort, right? So each time you initialize it, you will basically initialize it with the number of legs and whatnot. So this is an animal. Now let's say this is a generic class that I've made for all animals, right? So now I create another class called dog, and which extends from animal, which means that it inherits whatever is there in animal, and basically inherits those functions. So things like, so now so what this error says is that there is no default constructor. This is because there's a constructor for animal, right? So here also I have to do the same thing. So if I go to dog, and I'll have to add a constructor for this, which will basically say super dot, and number of legs you can be 4, right? Because dogs have 4 legs. So this is one thing. And now I can have another function called bark, right? Because so now for somebody else who's using this, so if I say dog is equal to new dog, I will have a reusable function called, I have bark, and I'll also have dog.walk, right? So this is basically inheritance. So by extends, what it means is that it inherits from the class. So in this case, the dog class inherits from the animal class. I hope that gives you a little bit of understanding of what that is. If you need more understanding on this, just have a look at what inheritance is in Java, and you will understand that. All right, so what's happening over here is that the movie list adapter is a custom adapter that we're making, which extends from the Recyclerview.adapter class. And now this Recyclerview.adapter class also requires a view holder, right? These are generics. Getting into generics would take a little bit of time, which is beyond the scope of this webinar. Maybe So at the end of this webinar, you guys can basically put in requests for other webinars that you would like to have, and based on the most number of votes that we get for it, we can host the next webinar accordingly. All right, so back to creating a view holder. So now I'm going to create a movie card view holder. This is basically there's another pattern in Android called the view holder pattern, which is what the Recyclerview in Android uses. Again, you can take a look at it, you can just read up about it, and you will understand this better. So, but for the time being, just understand that I'm creating a view holder, which is called a movie card view holder, which extends from the Recyclerview view holder class, right? And let's just implement this. So, 1 second. All right. So for the time being, that is all it needs. All right. So, and to this, I'm going to give it a movie card view holder. Okay, and let's just implement all the methods that the Recyclerview Adapter needs. So these are all the methods that the Recyclerview Adapter needs you to implement, which is on create view holder, on bind view holder, and get item count. I'm sure I've covered this properly in the IMAD videos. So in case you guys are a little doubtful on how we can use this, do go back to that when you get the time, and hopefully you'll understand that better. So now what I'm going to do over here is, so since I've created my adapter, I'm just going to do a new movie list adapter, right? Okay, so that is also done. Next, now obviously we want to show a list of movies, right? So that will be a card that is shown, or a list. Or I mean, this is very similar to the notifications view that we have on the Hasura Ed app, right? I don't know if you guys have downloaded it, or how many of you guys have downloaded it. We basically have an Android app for Hasura Ed, wherein you can have a look at all the videos and basically get notifications on what's going on and join study groups and whatnot. So if you have used that app, there is a very basic. Let me see if I can show this to you. Yeah, so this is the list, right? So this is the notification view, right? So this is also done using Recyclerview. So, and each of these things that you see is one view which is being repeated throughout this list, right? So for our movie details thingy, let's create a view as well. So let's go to resources, layout, and movie underscore card. Yeah, movie underscore card. And again, I'm going to use the linear layout. This is a little quicker and you guys will understand this better. So to our movie card, let's add an image view, which will basically show the image. And let's see if I can get a random image imported into this, so that, 1 second, let me just go to Google and type for an image placeholder. Okay, I'm going to use this. Because I've basically just downloaded a dummy image, which I am going to, oh, that image is not that great. Let's pick another one. Yeah, I guess this one's fine. Cool. Okay, let's call it placeholder. And we have a placeholder. All right. I'm just going to go here and let me get. All right. So I'm just going to add this. Okay. Instead, I'm just going to do a mass drop input. And navigate to the desktop. Okay, so this is our image. So I'm just gonna add this to our app. Okay, Swati has asked a question, why do we need to use an adapter? What is adapter view? Okay, so as I was saying, to use a recycler view, you basically need to do two things. One is to set a layout for it, basically to specify what sort of a list do you want, like a vertical list or a grid or a horizontal list, right? And the second thing you need to do is to set an adapter for it. This is where the recycler view knows where to get its data from. This adapter is what holds the data, right? And data for what needs to be shown, which is why we need the adapter. The adapter's view is basically the view that will be repeated across that list. I hope that makes sense. All right, cool. So we have integrated, okay, all right, so we have a placeholder image. Now I'm just gonna go here and say source drawable placeholder. Okay, so now we have an image and let's also add another thing called text view, which will basically be the name of the movie, right? So 1 second, yeah. Okay, so let's create this view. This also be match parent, and this can be wrap content, and let's add a text. So this could be movie name, right? So now this is not coming up because the image view is basically occupying the whole thing. So let's add a height to it. So let's say 100 dp. So don't go beyond that, and also adjust view to bounds, which basically adjusts the image to in its ratio. So which just means that if the height is 100, then depending on the image ratio, the width will also be adjusted accordingly. Let's put this. Okay, so now we have that. Let's add a little bit of padding to this. Instead, what I can do is I can do a match parent and then a wrap content. All right, this looks better, right? Cool. So we have that, and let's add a margin to this, something like 10 dp. All right, and let the height also be wrap content. Okay. So now below that we will basically show the movie title. So let's call this movie name. Another thing we can have, I mean, this will be movie image. So we have movie name, movie image, and okay, maybe maybe we can do something like the Book My Show UI. So maybe we can use something known as a card view to basically make a card around this. That is something that I'll leave it up to you guys. The UI is completely up to you. Depends on what you want to build, right? So for the time being, I'm going to use this image view, the text view for the title. Let's set a size for it. So let that be TSP. All right. Let's set a padding of 10 dp. Okay. Below this, we can show a the language of the movie, and yeah. So let's add that. Okay. This can be something like English, and one second, let me just. Okay. So this is how it looks. Let's also bold this. Text style can be bold. The movie name be bold, and let's only put a padding for the left. Padding top can be 10 dp. And padding bottom, which can also be 10 dp. Okay. And so if you use a constraint layout, you won't really have to do all of these things. These will all be constraints that you set for your views, which is why it's a little more, it's a little better to use it. But there's a little bit of a learning curve to figure out how to use it. Those of you who have done iOS application development, you will know of the auto layout, right? So it's similar to that, very, very similar to that. Okay, we're no longer supposed to use left or right, we're supposed to use we move this to end, so let's start and end, and let's do the same thing here. Okay, all right, so we have our movie name and we also have the language of the movie, right? Cool. Maybe we can also add a book or something of that button here, but in this case, in this tutorial, we're not really going to do that, so I'm going to leave it up to you guys. Cool. So there we have movie name, movie image, and the language. Let's call it movie language. Okay. So all right. So now we have a basic layout setup. So let's go back to our movie adapter, and here let's create a view. 1 second. Right. And let's import that. Say layout inflator dot from parent dot get context dot inflate r dot layout underscore movie card, right? And you also have to say, give it the view group if you need. So you say parent and you say, do you want to attach it to your parent? I would just say null. And then you return. So this method is expecting a return of type movie card view holder. So we are just going to do that, movie card view holder, and we're going to pass the view to it, right? And now going back to a movie card view holder, this is where our view is. So we can basically initialize the view over here. So we had a few things. First one was the image view. So image view, let's call it movie image. Next thing is the text view, which is movie title and movie language. Okay, now let's access these things. Movie image will be image view item view dot find view by id or id dot movie image. And similarly, we'll also have movie title and we have movie language, both of which are text views, and this will be movie name and movie language. Okay, all right, so going back to our adapter. So now that is done, the next thing is, 1 second. Oh, it's not supposed to be false. Yeah. All right. So now that we have basically given this adapter the view that we want to show, basically the view that will be repeated. Before we get to anything, actually, let's just see how this looks like, right? So I'm going to give it an item count of 10. So this is basically telling the adapter how many items are there in this list, right? So I'm just going to put 10. So right now it's just going to show this view, and let's just have a look at that. It's going to show that same view repeated about 10 times. meantime, I will just have a look at questions. If anyone has any. All right, no questions. Cool. All right, so as you can see, we have a basic list, which is repeated 10 times, right? So now let's access each of these cards. So for the time being, I'll just name the movies with like movie 1, movie 2, movie 3, just so that you guys can see what's happening. So the position is basically the position that this view holder holds on the list, right? By that I mean that, so what's going to happen, what a recycler view does is that it basically takes this layout and then reuses it for different positions. So each time it reuses it, it calls this onBind view holder function and tells us which position it is showing, and it gives us this holder so that we can change the data accordingly. So in this case, I will do holder dot movie title dot set text can be movie number position, right? So this will start from 0, but that's okay. Okay, so let's do that. So I'll just run this again. Okay, so as you can see, it says movie number 0, and it will go until movie number 9. Right? Okay, fine, perfect. So now we have that. All right, so now we have our recycler view working. Now, what ideally should happen is that this count should be set, all of this data should be set from the main activity and not inside the list adapter itself. So for that reason, what we're going to do is we are going to basically create a model object for us for our movie data, right? So let's call it movie record. Now going back to our console, let's see what our movie record has and create a record accordingly. So if you go here, we have so we have ID, name, image URL. Once again, I will just, all right, so we have, all right, okay, so we have ID, name, image URL, plot, language, and a list of genres, right? And so let's make the equivalent of that. I will just push this here. Okay, so I'm going to do okay, for this, another thing we need to do is we also need a converter to convert our Java object, a Java class object, into JSON, right? Because every API call that we make to get our data and whatever data we receive will be using the will be in JSON. So we need to learn we need to convert that to and fro JSON, right? So for that, usually you can use this library called Jaison, which does this for you. It's a serialization and deserialization library which you can use to convert to JSON or whatnot. In this case, since we're going to use Hasra, since we're going to eventually end up using the Hasra SDK, it comes with the Jaison library, so I'm just going to integrate that. So to add the Hasra SDK into Android SDK into your app, first you need to go to your project level build.gradle file. So that means you go into your project level build.gradle file and you paste this inside the repositories. So you do this. Next thing you need to do is in your app level Gradle file, you need to add this dependency. This is just like the way we added the Recyclerview. Added that. And so this is if you're using Gradle, and if you're using Maven, you can do it this way. Maven is another packaging manager that Android has. In this case, Android Studio comes by default with Gradle, and I'm just going to go with that. Alright, so now that that's done, let's just sync this and go back to our movie record. Alright, so our movie record has an ID, it has name, it has a movie URL, language, and a list of genres, right? So I'm going to create another thing called and I'm going to go here and say genre and genre list. Okay. Okay, now that we have that, let's create getters for all this. Okay. Now that we have done that, so here I'm going to write another method called set data, which will basically accept a list of movie records. So that will be movie record list, and also inside this adapter I'm going to create another list called movie record, call it movie records, and whenever this adapter is created for the very first time, I'm going to initialize it. Okay, and so this item count can be a movie record dot size, right? And here what we're going to do is say this dot movie records is equal to movie record list. Alright, so that's done. So now what happens is that we from the main activity, we're going to set the data into this adapter, and then this adapter is going to reload itself with the new data. Now how do we handle this? Now we're going to say the movie title is, so we can say movie record is equal to movie records dot get position, and we say record dot get movie name, holder dot movie language would be set text, record dot get movie language, and holder dot the image URL we'll get to in a bit. So let's add it to do here, image pending. Okay, so this is done. So now there will be, so now if I run the app, initially nothing will be shown. This is because right now the size of the movie records is 0. So what we are going to do is we are going to create some dummy data. So let's say movie record and let's create a constructor for the time being. Let's just make some setters for this. Okay, so going back here, I'm going to say record dot set movie name, which will be, let's call it Dunkirk. Okay, and we have record dot set language, let this be English. Similarly, let me name this one. We can have record 2. So this is just so that you can see this work. We can add the matrix, and that's also English. So now I'm going to create a list of movie records, call it movie records equal to new array list, and add record 1 and also add record to. So I just ran the app. So as you can see, there's nothing to show, right? So what I'm going to do is I am next going to set an adapter here. So I'm going to say movie list adapter is equal to new movie list adapter, and set this adapter here. Okay, and then say adapter dot set data, which was movie records, and adapter dot notify data set changed. Right. Basically, I'm telling that the data that the adapter had is no longer the same, and at which point the adapter will basically reload itself. So let's see how this looks. Okay, so the app is loaded. Yeah, so as you can see, our dummy data is working perfectly, right? And there are only two, so there's nothing else to scroll to. All right, so this is also working fine. Now what we need to do is we need to fetch the list of movies from our DB and then populate our view accordingly, right? All right, so let's do that. So for that, let's go back into our Hasura SDK, the Android Sdk documentation, and continue where we left off, right? So we did the download the Hasura SDK bit. Next we're going to do is set up Hasura, right? So first thing we need to do is set up a project config for the SDK to use. So we are going to go here, and the ideal place to do this would be in the application class. So let's call it movie application, and this will extend the application class. And let's use the onCreate method to do this. So we have a project config, import this class. All right, and we have to set the project name. So the project name that I have is Explainate 379. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to set the project name to be that. Next thing we need to do is initialize Hasura. So we have our project config set up. Now we're going to initialize, set the project config for this for our Hasura instance, right? So we're doing that, and I'm also enabling logs just so that I can see what's happening. And we have initialized Hasura, right? So this is the initialization step. Now what we are going to be doing is using the data API. So the Hasura user is basically for authentication and logging in, log out, and all that. Do go through this documentation. It should be quite clear. For this app, we don't really have any authentication. We don't really have any sign in or login. So we're going to skip that bit, and we're going to move directly to the data service. The data service is what is going to help us query our DB, right? So first, let's go into the API Explorer and see how we can make a select query. So search for select. So let it be select. We also have relationships, so let it be select across relationships. Okay. Our table is called movie. The columns that we want are ID. Let me just create a new tab for this so that I know we're getting everything. The internet is slow again. Okay, cool. All right, so we need ID, name, image URL, plot, language, and also the genres relationship, right? So we're going to go here, we're going to say ID, name, image URL, plot, language, and now to fetch genres, we need to fetch it as a relationship. So since we added it as a relationship, right? So let's fetch that, which would be name genres, and column would be, I think, just the name. I don't think we want anything else, right? We just want the name. So it would be called genre underscore name. So genre underscore name, and we don't want this. We do not want anything else. Okay. All right. So we're making a select query on the movie table, and we're fetching ID, name, image URL, plot, and language, and also the relationship genres, and just the genre name out of that table, right? All right. Let's delete this. Let's add the admin token so that we can fetch it. And let's hit this API and see if we get the response. Okay, so we have gotten the response. So we have gotten, okay, one second, let me just blow this out of here and see it better. It's taking an extremely long time to load, so I'm just going to go and make do with this. Okay, so alright, so we have our list of movies, which is Shawshank Redemption and The Dark Knight, and we have a list of genres. We have the plot, language, image, URL, everything, right? So now let's make this request. So for that, what we need to do is fetch data from Hasura. Okay, so let's say Hasura dot get client and dot use data service dot we have to set a request body, and which can be like so, right? So let's set some request body, and we're also expecting a response type array of, we're expecting an array response of type movie record, right? Dot class. Okay, and so let's enqueue this, and all right. So now let's set the request body. So we have to basically create a Java representation of this, which is a little cumbersome. So what we can do instead is convert this query, this data query, into a query template, right? So a query template is something that will basically shorten this for you, and we can just convert this into like a GET request, right? And just template this body. You will see how this works, or it will make more sense to you once I do this. So click on convert to query template. So we got this. The template name can be get underscore movies. Template description can be fetches a list of all movies from the movie table, right? So I've created a query template for this, and so let's create this now. So now I have a query template which says get movies. So it's basically just a get request to this. In case I had queries, it could also be a post request. So it can either be a get request or a post request to this endpoint, right? So let's try that out. Add the admin token, and I don't think we need the admin token because there is no permission set on that table. But anyways, so as you can see, now we have cut short our our data query into a query template, which is called get movies, right? So the Hasura SDK also has support for that. So instead of using this, what we are going to do is going to delete this and we're going to say use query template service, and the template name is get movies, get underscore movies, and we're going to say expect response array of type movie record dot class, and give you a callback. In case you wanted to set some params to this, you could do set request params, right? Anyways, so this is basically our request. Now we need to tweak our movie record. So each movie record of ours should handle all of this, right? So ID, name, image URL, plot, language has been handled. Next we need to handle genres properly. If you remember, I had left it blank. So I'm going to go to movie genres, and I'm just going to create a key called genre name, which will be of type string. That's it. So remember I was talking about Jaison. So one annotation that Jaison provides is called Serialized Name, which basically means that I can set the name here. So what key I want for this, and let this just be whatever, right? So basically this will map my JSON request to this key, to genre name. So basically whenever it's mapping genres, it will go into this list of movie genres that I've made, and it will map this key with the key provided here. And if they're the same, then that value is pasted into this, right? Which is what's happening over here. Alright, so we've done that. Going back to our movie record, I will just add the serialized name for all of these. You can also leave them blank, but I like to specify them. Okay. This would be image URL plot. I'm just going to copy this and just paste it here for the time being so that I can have a better look at it. Cool. So movie URL, so that is image underscore URL, serialized name, language, and we have genres. Okay, so that's done. Now we have that data as well, right? Okay, so now let's see if this works. So we no longer need this. We can erase that. We do need to set the adapter and data. We'll get to that in a bit. Maybe we can just set it here and see if it works. So the adapter has to be final because we're using inside a callback. And let's just show a toast in case there's an error. Something went wrong. Length long, show. Okay. Okay, so let's see if this works. My team viewer seems to be okay. We're running the app right now. Okay, so some of you are asking for the GitHub link for the SDK documentation. So that, what you have to do is, I'll just post it on the comment. So it's basically, one second, I will just reply to. Yeah, so I'll just reply to your comment on the comment thread. So you'll get a link to this SDK, to the Android SDK. Okay, let me just close off all these tabs for a second. Okay. All right, so it says that our app has crashed. So let's see why that has happened. Okay, so since we created a custom movie application which extends from application, this is where the initialization of Hasura is happening. So the error basically says that client is null, right? So this is because this has not really been called yet, and for that to happen, we need to basically set it over here, right? So you have to basically go to your Android manifest and add your custom application class that you built. Otherwise, Android by default will call its own application class, which will be this class, and do the needful. If you need to do some other tweaking or initial setup, that is when you override the application class like this. And so in this case, I wanted to set up Hasura in the application class. So this class gets called first, even before your launcher activity gets called. So the ideal place to do an initialization of any SDK or library would be here. So now that I've done that, let's run our app again. My connection keeps going off from this. All right. So the next error we got is that the security exception, which says that the permission denied, missing internet permission. This means that we have to add an internet permission in our Android manifest since we are connected to the internet, right? So let's do users permission and just search for internet and add that, right? Okay. And run the app again. Okay, my connection seems to be going off. Okay. Let me just set it up again. Second, otherwise I'll have to run it on my emulator, which will be extremely slow. So let's just my internet is gone. If I disconnect, it'll go in. Is this working? What are you connected to, Asmita ICT? Okay. there was a slight problem with the internet, and now this is resolved. Okay, so you can see my app again, right? All right, so let's go back to Android Studio. So what happened was that the request was made, so let's just see what happens anyways. Okay, so the request is made, but there's nothing really happening, right? So we're still waiting for the response. So one thing that we need to do is we need to show a loading indicator of sorts, just to see that, just to see what's going on, right? So let's create a progress bar, or rather, let's add something to our layout which looked a little better. So let's go here and let's add this thing called a swipe refresh layout, which will be match parent and match parent, and inside that we are going to put our recycler view, and I'm going to give it an ID of refresh layout, or let's call it swipe refresh. Okay, and also let's access this then. So we have our swipe refresh layout. Find view by ID, r.id. Swipe refresh. Okay, sorry. Sorry guys. Alright, so so the swipe refresh layout is basically the layout that you see when a list is refreshing, right? So I'll show you how it looks. Installing. Let's write another function for fetching data, and let's put it here. Okay, so okay, all right, so the swipe refresh layout is basically this circular thing that you see that comes up. So if I let it go, then it starts loading the view, right? My internet is a little slow. My internet is a little slow, so you can't really see it well. All right, so this circular thing that you see is the swipe refresh layout. So what you can do is add a listener onto this. So put a on refresh listener, and so what this does is that each time we swipe that layout down, and when that loading icon comes up, we get notified over here, right? So let's log this for a second. So this is in the main activity, and on refresh, right? Adapter, there's no reference to adapter, so let's make it a global variable. And let's take off final. We can also take this off. Okay. I'm just going to take this off as well. I don't think it's required. Alright, so what's happening now is that I will also make the swipe refresh layout global so that we can access it from other places. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say swipe refresh layout set refreshing true, right? So this basically manually shows that it programmatically shows that loading icon, and so once the a callback has come through, basically if it's a failure or a success, we will hide this, right? So set refreshing false, and I'm going to hide it in the onFailure method as well. Okay, so let's see, and also call the fetch data method, right? It says there are some errors somewhere. So I will just find that out. Let's run this again. And let's go back to our view. So as you can see, the loading indicator came. Now if I pull it down, it shows up again, right? That was me pulling it down. You can't really see my finger. Or since the internet is a little slow, this video is a little lagging. But anyways, so when I pull it down, the refresh indicator is shown. And if you check our logs, you'll see that main activity on refresh is called, right? Which means that this has been called. So ideally what we want to do is when the user wants to refresh his layout, we will just fetch this again. And so that's what we do, right? And also we need to see why our API is failing. So it's saying that error select on movie role for anonymous is not allowed. So which means that there is no anonymous permission set on the on our table, on our movie table. So let's go to movies and set permissions, and let's set anonymous permissions. Okay, let's add it again. Let's just add select permissions, update and delete is not allowed, right? So let update and delete not be allowed. Insert also should not be allowed. So only select on this table for anonymous, and he can basically select everything he wants. So let's add this. So the anonymous role has been added. Now if I basically go back into my app and run it again, it should work. So let's do that. I'm trying to connect to a better Wi-Fi so that it shows up. Okay, so the app has run. Let us go here and refresh it. It says something went wrong. Let's see why that is. Okay, so it says that the role anonymous is not there in the relationship genres, right? So movie genre basically does not have a permission set. So let's go here and add anonymous. Again, no movie ID, only genre name. Let's save that. And also add the same thing to our genre table. Okay, so now we're going to go back into our app. We don't really need to run the app again. We just need to refresh this page and see if this works. All right, perfect. So our two movies are coming up. If I were to add another movie, that will also come up. So let's do that. Let's go to movies. Let's go to IMDb. Or actually, before that, let's before we add another data, let's also show the image. So loading the image is another thing in itself. You can't just randomly put in the link and it won't just show the image, right? So you need to download the image and in the background, and then load it up in this view so that it is shown. Now, there are a lot of libraries in Android which help you do that. Like two such libraries are Picasso and another one called Glide. You can choose to go with anything, right? So I'm just going to go with whatever loads first. Oh, both of them loaded at the same time. All right, so Picasso's, so as you can see, this is how you do this. You just go Picasso.with context, give it a context, and you give it the URL, and then you just basically give it the image view or wherever you want to load it, right? And there are a lot of other things that you can do. You can crop, you can do image transformations, and etc., which I'm not going to get into. You can also set a placeholder. So this is useful because the image view will basically show the placeholder until the image is loaded, right? Which is a good feature to have, which makes it smooth and which gives a good interface, which is a good user interface, right? So I'm going to go with Picasso, and I'm going to go to my module, add it, sync. And then if you remember, our onBind view holder is where we set our data. So I'm going to go back to my onBind view holder and basically use this, right? So I'm going to do Picasso.with. What we can do here is get the context from here, right? Parent.get context. Right, and I'm going to use this context, load it with record.get image URL into folder.movie image, right? And when this is happening, I will also want to show a placeholder, the one that we have. All right, so this is a placeholder, so I'm going to do r.drawable.placeholder, right? All right, so with this, I think our app should look a little better. Our images should start showing up. And while that's loading, I'll take up some questions. Okay, so Srividya has asked, so do apps like Twitter and Facebook which load new content dynamically have a refresher based on a timer or like a listener on the scroll? So how that works is, so there are two things, right? Well, one thing is that when you're scrolling down the list, what apps like Facebook do is that when you reach the bottom of the list, it basically figures out that they've reached the bottom of the list and then loads the rest of the content. And as for the content that loads up dynamically, there are multiple things that you can do. One can be one thing is that it can keep polling the server to check if there is new data that has come up. Another thing is that you can send a push notification to all the devices saying that new data has come. So you don't really need to show a card or a notification card on top. But when your app gets the push notification in the background, it basically realizes that, okay, fine, new data has come, and then it will reload the page for you, right? And finally, we can also have something known as a socket connection. So basically how chat works, right? So you connect to a socket, and that socket basically keeps emitting events to your app saying that new data has come in the home feed. So then it reloads the home feed and basically shows the new data. These are multiple ways in which you can do, depending on your scale and what type of users that you're dealing with or the type of app that you're building. This would vary. All right, so as you can see, the image has come up, the name is there, the language is also working fine. But one thing is that the icon is, the image is too big. So this is because if we go back to our adapter and our layout, this is because we have used wrap content for the height and adjust view to bounds, right? So basically, what's happening is that for this height, for this width, the ratio dictates that the image should be this big. So now to prevent that, what we're going to do is we are just going to do a width of maybe 100 dp. 100 dp is too small. Maybe 200 dp, 300. Okay, let's give it a layout gravity of center, and the height can be also 300 dp, right? So, and we also have I think scale type, which will be fit. Let's make it fit XY. Fit XY will look kind of bad, so let's do fit center. Okay, and now that we've done that, let's run the app again. Okay, so our list is loading and we have the items also, right? Let's make a demarcation between the two items. So for that, I am just going to add a line. So let it just be a frame layout, match parent, height can be 1 dp, and the background color can just be black, right? So I'm going to go to my colors.xml and add another color like black, right? So I added that. So now we have a line. Let's also add a margin on top of this. Okay, so this will hopefully demarcate the thing. You can also put it inside a card and whatnot, which will look much better, I suppose. So ideally in these situations you would get an image which is wider than, so basically whose width is greater than the height, so that it looks better. Again, if I was supposed to show a grid layout wherein I would show two columns in the same screen, so in that case this will look better, right? Because it will come on this side like this. So it depends on the view that you're showing. And alright, so this is basically the thing. Now I wanted to show you how this update would work, right? So let's go back into our DB. Let's go into our movie database, go to insert row, and let's go to IMDb and get another movie. Top 250, and let's say The Godfather. Right, so I'm going to go here, add the name as The Godfather, add the plot, take this image, copy the image address, language is English. Now I'll go to movie genre and add it, which would be crime and drama. So let's go here. Movie ID is 4, so I would say 4 crime and drama. Okay, so now that that's done, so if I go back to my app and refresh the screen, we should get another item, which is The Godfather, right? Alright, so with this, we have created a very simple list which we can show. The next thing that you guys can do is add a click on this view, so that you can direct the user to a more detailed page wherein you can have a better UI, maybe an image on like something like Book My Show, wherein you will have an image and the trailer, button for trailers, wherein you will put another column over here which says YouTube link or something of that sort. So you should direct them to the trailer over there. You can also show the list of genres that we've added. You can show the plot, and if in case you're making like a movie booking app, then you can add a book button over here, and you can do multiple things of that sort. But with this, we come to the end of the webinar. And in case you guys have any questions, I'll be available on the comment section.